Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. I wanted to give a special thank you and shout out to Miss Madeline Hannon for really making this event happen. And so really to start off, my name is First Lieutenant Jacob Schwanz, and I'm a Army healthcare recruiter based in the Philadelphia area. And so really for the layout of our discussion tonight, I'll begin by providing a brief overview of Army medicine and the programs offered. And then Dr. Sletton, a currently servicing emergency medicine physician, will share his experience in the Army. And then really for the rest of our time together, we'll just open it up to Q&A. So if you don't mind kind of just saving your questions till the end of them, we'll be able to hopefully get to each and every one of them. And so I'll start by sharing my screen right now. Let's see. Get it going. And so if hopefully you can all see the presentation right now, but can you see the presentation? Awesome. And so really to begin with, in the Army Medical Department, there exists two main service opportunities for emergency medicine physicians. The first is active duty or full-time service at an Army installation. And the second one is serving within the Army Reserve as part-time, and that's more so within your local area. And so really both of these opportunities in Army medicine allow one to not only fully practice as an emergency medicine physician, but also to really be a leader in one of the world's largest healthcare networks that not only has a $13 billion annual budget, but also services up to 4 million beneficiaries. So really practicing at the forefront of medicine, Army medicine, emergency medicine physicians care for primarily those who serve our nation and their families. And so in terms of location, there are over 90 medical centers, community hospitals, and clinics, with the largest being the Brooke Army Medical Center, the Row 1 Trauma Center in San Antonio, Texas. And then also with all the different locations, there are also continual opportunities for professional and leadership development. And these range from serving as a commander to Army medical personnel to really participating in various fellowships. As for the benefits for active duty service, the main ones to note are there's a $300,000 sign-on bonus for those currently practicing. There's also up to $1,200,000 in loan repayment through the Health Professional Loan Repayment Program, known as the HPLRP. And so this provides $40,000 a year directly to lending institutions for up to 3 years. And then there's also incentive pays of $49,000 a year and board certification pay of $6,000 a year. And this is all on top of a base pay salary that the officer receives, and that can be upward of $200,000 a year at the rank of captain, which is the rank that most emergency medicine physicians would join the Army. And so really in addition to these incentives, there's also other highlights to include, which include like a 401k 5% match. There's also employee covered malpractice insurance, full health and dental insurance for that officer and their family members. And addition to that, if they are moving, then it's the Army that fully covers that move and any of the expenses associated with it. And so really with those benefits, what the service obligation looks like is for those interested in taking the sign-on bonus, that's a minimum of 4-year commitment. And then as for the loan repayment, what that looks like is a year for each year the loan repayment is received, and that's a 2-year minimum commitment. And then there's also the opportunity to combine both if one elects to, and that could be up to 7 years for taking the sign-on bonus and the 3 years in loan repayment. And then in terms of requirements for being able to join active duty service as an emergency medicine physician, first and foremost is citizenship. And then also on top of that is just the educational portion of it, just holding that doctorate in medicine or osteopathy degree. And then in addition to that and the other requirements, there's also in terms of the application, there's a background check and a medical exam, which both have to be passed, but then there's waivers that can be applicable on a case-by-case basis. And so for those interested in active duty service, currently in either medical school or residency, there is a financial assistance program, otherwise known as the FAP. And so what this program does is it applies to those who are PGY2 and above, and it offers a $2,400 monthly stipend for the remainder of medical school, and then also a $45,000 yearly grant during residency. And for this program, what the requirements entail is being able to pass the respective exam, all three steps of it on the first go. And then the service obligation, what that looks like is a 2-year minimum service commitment. And then for each half year the stipend is received, that equates to a half-year additional service commitment. And then kind of moving over to the reserve portion, in terms of those benefits, there's a $50,000 yearly bonus, and then also up to a $250,000, my apologies, in loan repayment. And so this is additionally $40,000 a year, but this is up to 6 years instead of 3 years, like for active duty. And then for the yearly base pay salary, that's around $50,000 for a captain, and that's for a minimum of 36 days of service out of that year. And so overall, the reserve side of the house is meant to more so complement a civilian practice while really providing greater autonomy and flexibility to the officer. And then in terms of the service obligation for Army Reserve, there's more options in terms of it could be either a 2, 3, or 4-year commitment. And so this primarily can look like 2 different subsets. One of them is being within a troop program unit. And so what that looks like is serving essentially 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the summer. And then there's also a different opportunity, which is through the Army Medical Department Professional Management Command. And so what that looks like is more an average of serving 50 days around there out of the year. And then those days can be broken up however the officer sees fit. And so that provides a little more autonomy to them. And then during those 50 or so days of service, what that more so looks like is backfilling active duty emergency medicine physicians on a U.S. Army installation, or it could be something along the lines of presenting during either GME lectures or also attending conferences that also meets those requirements. And then in terms of the requirements for joining the Army Reserve as an emergency medicine physician, most of them are almost identical to that of active duty requirements. In terms of citizenship, there's also the option to just have residency. And then in addition to those requirements, it's a similar case in terms of the background check and physical exam in order to be accepted to serve as a reserve emergency medicine physician officer in the U.S. Army. And so for those currently in their residency that are interested in the reserve service, there's the Specialized Training Assistance Program, otherwise known as the STRAP. And so this is very similar to the FAP program in the sense that it provides a $2,400 monthly stipend to either the student or the resident. And then in terms of the obligation that comes with that is for each 6 months, the stipend is received. It's a 1-year obligation. And then in addition to being able to participate in the STRAP program, there's also the option to have the Health Professions Loan Repayment Program as well. And so an individual could be participating in the strap and then after residency also receive up to $250,000 of loan repayment those subsequent years. And then essentially for the next steps for those who are interested, a brief summary of this information: an emergency medicine program and opportunities brochure has been posted on the website where this webinar link was found. And so really within that brochure is just an outline of the information that I briefly covered. And in addition to that, it also has the contact information that's also on this slide for either myself or a few of my colleagues who would be more than willing to answer any more specific questions that individuals might have following up from this evening's webinar. But really with that, now I guess we'll transition over to hearing from our guest speaker, who's camp promotable, or Dr. Sletton. And so he's currently an AAEM member and the current president of the AAEM Uniformed Service Division. And so now I'll turn it over to him to share his military experience.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Schwantz. That was really a great overview. So I'll just talk briefly about what it's been like for me. And I think I've gotten pretty lucky, and everything's kind of went exactly the way I wanted to since I've been in the military. But I started off, I went to residency at Madigan, which is out in Seattle, and it's an amazing part of the country if you haven't been there before. We met great friends, and I thought the residency experience was incredible as far as the sense of fraternity and the team environment. And I just really thought it was a great residency training experience. We did all the residency programs do a lot of have a lot of partnerships with universities and civilian programs. So about half your time you'll spend training in a military installation, taking care of active duty military and their family members. And then the other half you'll go out into the communities and get really valuable experience either at universities or kind of community rotations. So you end up really kind of well-rounded. One of the other cool things about military training is that you do training exercises that you'll never do in a civilian setting. Combat casualty care course, and you simulate training or taking care of casualties in a Black Hawk and all these sort of really cool things. So if you're into that kind of adventure and kind of that kind of experience, I think you're only going to get that kind of thing in the military. So I thought residency was great for that reason. Then I came down to Brooke Army Medical Center, which, like Lieutenant Schwantz alluded to, is the kind of the mecca of military hospitals, the largest DoD facility, the only level 1 trauma center in the military, I believe. And it's pretty much where most innovation and change happens, and most regulations and standards are set basically here at BAMC. It's a huge state-of-the-art facility, and it's been an amazing experience here where we get all the, we share half the level 1 trauma comes to us. The other half goes to UT. We see a lot of pathology, and you get a lot of, another thing about the military is early in your career, you're going to get a lot of opportunities to have leadership opportunities, basically. So I'm already an associate program director here, which most people can't, in the civilian center, you're just not going to get opportunities like that just a few years out from residency. There's a lot of access to grants with the military and the DoD has a lot of grant money. So, you get a lot of opportunities for big time research projects. And then the other cool thing that kind of continued on is these really interesting, unique, military only training opportunities where you do field exercises. I'm currently attached to a cache. So there's this process called being mapped where you work in a hospital, but you're also kind of you're kind of shared by a force comm unit. And I'm shared by a combat support hospital or a cache. Some people used to call them a MASH. They've had all sorts of different terms, field hospital, but essentially we're just kind of like these kind of hospitals that can just set up over the course of 24 hours with tents and be fully functional with x-rays, with surgeons, with all the specialty services. And it's pretty amazing. So we've had a couple field exercises where we train, in the desert, we set up our field hospital, all the team falls in together and takes care of patients. And then I deployed to that team to Iraq. It's probably one of the things I'm most proud about is my deployment. And I know before I joined the military, I was really scared about deploying, but by the time you kind of get into it, you're really excited to get your first deployment. And so I just came back from my deployment. It was a really great experience, and saw some interesting things and made some unbelievable friends like that will be lifelong friends forever. And now I'm back kind of serving in my academic position here at BAMC. And that's pretty much my story in a nutshell. Again, everyone has different paths you can go on. You can be very operational if you want. You can go do like really cool special operations, like, things like that. Or you can go academic, or you can go admin and try to become chief of a department. But the military really, I mean, as far as what I wanted to do, this worked out great. This is exactly how I wanted it to go. And that's pretty much my story.
Awesome. And so, thank you, Dr. Slatton. And really with that, we kind of just open it up to see if there's any questions, if anyone would like to hear more about his experience or anything along those lines.
I'm seeing some stuff pop up in the chat. Yeah, we can definitely. So it looks like Joshua Sawyer. Yeah, we can definitely get you in USA. We are very interested. We want to build our family in USAAEM, and there's all sorts of like opportunities for med students to get involved and take on leadership positions. So we can do that. Talk about the quality of life and quality of practice. I would say, as far as quality of life, that's a good thing. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to mention that. I think that quality of life for residents is probably better in the military because you get paid better. When you're a civilian resident, you really are making not very much for how much time you're putting into the hospital. In the military, you get paid pretty fairly. You get paid like an adult, and it's fair for how much work you're putting in. Probably twice as much as a civilian. And so you are already in a financial position to start investing in retirement, buying a house, doing things that you need to do. Whereas most people in the civilian sector really have to push all that stuff off. As far as like my experience, I don't think I was overworked. I think we were probably on par with, as far, quality of life, on par with all of our other residents. And now as a staff and just generally in the Army, I think there's more of a sense of fraternity and like being a part of a brotherhood than other kind of, I guess, places that you might train or work. I think there's really kind of a sense of we're all in this together. And whenever you go somewhere and you see someone else who's been in the military, there's an automatic connection. And honestly, a lot of job opportunities open up when you're out as well, because anyone who served prior is going to connect with you right away. So I kind of went off on a tangent, but I think because there's more of a sense that there's a built-in sense of community, the quality of practice is a little bit better. And because as a resident, you're getting paid a little bit more fairly, I think that makes the experience a little bit more palatable. Residency, is going to suck a lot at times, no matter what. Let's see. Our international medical scooter. Last time I checked, and Lieutenant Schwantz can probably answer that question better than me. Actually, I'll let him take that question.
Yes, sir. And so the question itself is, are international medical graduates accepted into Army medicine programs? And the short answer is yes. It's definitely more so a case-by-case basis in terms of accreditation for those institutions that are international. But overall, it's definitely a very likely situation that yours applies, especially for the St. George's University in Granada. And especially also being a U.S. citizen. And so at least with that, based on that information, yes, that's definitely not an inhibiting factor.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Trying to think. Oh, another thing that kind of other little bonuses. There's all sorts of little benefits to being in the military that I didn't. You don't really realize when you sign up, like VA loans when you buy a house, huge benefit to be able to buy a house without any money down. There's all sorts of little hidden bonuses to being in the military that you don't realize until you're around. Another hidden bonus is the oh God, I'm gonna blank on it. The GI Bill, where you can go back to school. They basically will pay for you to go back to school. Say you want to go back for an MBA, which a lot of people do, or anything really. Say you get through medicine and you're interested in getting some an IT background as well, because you're kind of interested in information technology and how it merges with medicine or whatever. the military will you get the GI Bill, so you can go back to school for free. And if you're in long enough, you can actually give that to your kids, which is even, or your spouse, which is also a pretty cool benefit. So those are some of the hidden things that I didn't even know about when I first signed up.
Yeah, the non-monetary benefits are certainly huge. Just like Dr. Slatton said, the ability to transfer GI Bill to your family, the shopping at the commissary, the tax-free shopping, free medical care for you, and then low cost medical care for your family, and dental care. I mean, those are massive benefits that on the civilian side would drain your wallet.
Yeah, the healthcare, the health insurance is really great in the military, and so is the retirement plan. And those are things that really keep people around as well. It's just there's so many great like kind of benefits that you don't really, you don't even realize how important it is to you until maybe you're a little bit further along, and depending on, where everyone is in their life. But it's definitely becoming a lot more important to me lately.
Yeah. And so does anyone else have any other questions for either Dr. Sletton or myself? Not seeing any currently. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll say my take is, this is my take. For anyone who's considering it, I think don't do it just for the money. If you got to believe in what you're going to be doing. And I think most people that join do believe in it, but if you don't believe in it, I think you will find that you regret the decision. I think you got to really believe that you want to take care of soldiers. You're willing to go do some field exercises and do some training and take a month and go live in do medicine in some really austere environments. Like, you got to be excited about that kind of stuff. And if you find that stuff just, if you're like, I just did it for the money, and you can't really get excited about the part that's Army, you're just not going to be very happy with it. So just I think it's really cool because you get to do stuff like that. There's no other way you're going to get to be a doctor and also have that kind of adventure and be able to say you've done medicine like that, or done a relief mission in Jamaica when they get hit by a hurricane, or, it's just, you get to do some really cool things, but it's not all easy either. So sometimes it's hard, and you got to kind of believe in what you're doing. So I would say that. What does the career path look like after residency? How do you become an area surgeon, CENTCOM or Southcom? So with that, you kind of have to, I guess, to become in a position like that, you're going to need to obviously stick around for a little bit. You can't just be a lowly captain like me, or even a major. You're probably going to at least have to be a lieutenant colonel or a colonel to get to command such a big region like that, CENTCOM or Southcom or whatever. But basically, I think if you stick around and you are a pretty solid officer and doctor, and you're interested in taking command positions, they want you to take command positions, because that, honestly, most physicians don't want to take command positions. They want to take care of patients. So if you're a physician and you want command positions, they'll come to you. You just got to stick it out and, get some experience and some time under your belt, and you can get those positions. But you probably will have to be in at least 10 or 12 years before you're going to be able to become the, CENTCOM surgeon.
Yeah.
I'll let Lieutenant Schwanz talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so the next question is just asking to tell a bit about the overall commissioning process. And so really to speak more so on that, first kind of just cover briefly the application process. And so really what that looks like for an individual that is committed in joining either the active duty or reserve component, they would essentially kind of the first step is sitting down with a healthcare recruiter. And so the application process itself is completely online. And really what that recruiter does is they'll sit down with you and walk you through each step of that process, whether it's collecting kind of the source documents that are required, just whether it's substantiating a individual CV and then looking back into your work and educational history. And really from there, it's projecting the dates that that individual can get their physical performed and then also complete their background check. And so really once those two main aspects have been completed, then it will come down to the point where different forms will be filled out. And so really with those, they kind of set the individual up to be commissioned as an Army officer in one of those two components. And so really in terms of the overall timeline, it can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And really looking at that, it's definitely good to kind of backwards plan in terms of where you want to see yourself in the next few months, and then kind of what amount of work and effort you want to put into the application process, because that can definitely impact the overall timeline of it in terms of being able to complete the process sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there too as well, Jacob. This is Major Maploff. Yeah, the application process, like Jacob said, could go anywhere from 3 to 6 months. But more likely, due to the length of the individual components of the application process, it could certainly take as long as 12 months to fully finalize. There's really 4 major steps in the application process. The first process is document gathering, source gathering. That's where you're going to get our social security card. We're going to get birth certificates. We're going to get all your family information, all the basic information that the government's going to need from you to run a full and complete, robust background check and security verification. Then the second phase is your medical qualification phase. This is where you're going to either go to the Military Entrance Processing Station, or MEPS, or we're going to take you to a military treatment facility for a physical exam to make sure that you are fit and physically qualified to serve. The third phase of the application process, that's where we're going to finalize the complete board packet or application and send it off to a selection panel. That's when you'll hear things like your scroll. That's when your scroll will be submitted to the Department of Defense, because all commissioned officers within the military are scrolled and ran through the DoD for approval. And then the fourth and final phase is post-board selection or decline. That's when you'll be notified of the results of the selection panel if you were selected to be a commissioned officer within the Army or any branch of the service. And then the finalization. That's when we would actually do your commissioning, and we would submit your paperwork up to Human Resources Command in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and they would issue your orders onto either active duty or into the Army Reserve.
Yeah, thank you, Major Plouffe. Yeah. And so the next question I see are, what are the advantages or disadvantages do you see for physicians between the Army Guard and the Reserve?
I could take that if you want, Jacob.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. So the advantages and disadvantages all depend on the specialty that you hold. There are certain specialties that the Guard does not have that the Army Reserve does have. Really, the missions are also different too. The mission of the Guard is more of a state-based combat arms type mission. And the mission of the Army Reserve is more of a global humanitarian and military backfill mission. So depending on, where you see yourself, do you see yourself as hanging out in the States and not really have a lot of portability? If you sign up for, like, say, the Wisconsin Guard, you're going to be in the Wisconsin Guard. If you end up taking a job as a chief of surgery in Dallas, Texas, you will have to jump through hoops to transfer into the Dallas or into the Texas National Guard. Army Reserve is a national component. So you can transfer freely, and you're not confined to a specific state in the reserve component. And then, like I said, it's all mission related. Where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself more in the combat arms, kicking down doors, with the infantry units and heading out there and if they're mobilized or deployed in forward areas, being out there with the soldiers and helping them on the battlefield, or in the Army Reserve, it's a little bit different. More, the mission is more backfill, combat support hospital, and there's more availability for a wide array of specialties. This is where your anesthesiologist would reside. This is where your diagnostic radiologist would reside. On the guard side, it's more your emergency med docs, your 61 hotels, or your primary care physicians, general surgeons, and that stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. And then the next question I see is how long would you have to stay in one spot, and are there incentives for certain areas? At least in terms of active duty, usually for being within the continental US, it's usually 2 years at any respective location. And then for those individuals who might be interested in going overseas, those are usually 3 years for going to somewhere in the Southeast Asia region or somewhere over in Europe. And then for incentives for certain areas, what the Army provides in terms of the base pay salaries is there's also basic allowance for housing. And so depending on what the kind of the living expenses are for different regions across the country, the Army compensates those officers for those expenses in terms of providing monthly allowances for whether it's rent or mortgage, and then also for other like basic living expenses as well. And so in terms of like incentives for certain areas, there's really just compensation for all areas across the US and even those overseas in terms of the living expenses. And
I think someone asked about an age limit, if there's an age limit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the age limit for active duty, it's 42, and then for reserve, it can be greater than that. And then usually more so for the reserve side, oftentimes a waiver can be put in for someone who's a bit older. And that's mainly because for those looking to do the reserve, they're usually kind of looking to do that later on in life. And so oftentimes based on their kind of plethora of educational and work experience, the Army definitely sees that as a huge additional value to their healthcare network. And so age waivers are often accepted for individuals who are a bit older, as long as they have a clean bill of health.
Right. I would agree with that. Yeah, the Army Reserve is more inclined to grant age waivers for specialties that bring value to the service. There was a question on there I want to jump back to. It was somebody who is currently in MSSP and asking about moving around during residency and what that would look like. That's perfectly okay while you're in the Army's MSSP program or medical school stipend program. That is an Army Reserve program. You are in a student status and actually attached to the Army Professional Medical Command. So you're already in like free agent status. So it doesn't matter where you move to complete your residency or what that looks like. You're not going to be doing drills. You're not going to be going to a unit, a physical unit, to do your monthly drills. You will be working with the Army Professional Medical Command to start your payback for the commitment while for gaining this the stipend while in medical school. So hopefully that answers that question. There's nothing to worry about. when it comes to moving around for residency while you're in the MSSP.
And then the next question I see kind of down the list is, it states I'm a MS4 already in the MD SSP and plan to do strap in residency. I joined the webinar today to gain a better idea on when to complete DCC, which is direct commission course, and BOLC, which is basic officer leadership course, and to get connections in general. I wasn't expecting questions to be answered. And so really for DCC and basic officer leadership course, there's definitely a plethora of different opportunities in terms of whether it's kind of during the winter or summer timeframes to attending those courses. But Dr. Sletton, do you mind kind of sharing when you attended those two courses?
Yeah, so I did. I didn't do the DCC one, but I did BOLC, and I did that the summer between my first and second year. And that was a really good time for me. It looked, but I thought the summer was a good time to do it. And it looks like you'd probably have to do it. I guess you'd potentially this upcoming summer. I don't know what's going on with COVID though, but that was a good time. And especially because you're not really being expected to do a lot of, well, I guess that was a research year for a research summer for a lot of people in med school. So I guess when a lot of other people were kind of getting into the research lab, I was doing my BOLC course, but other people did it later in their medical school time too. It just seemed like the majority of people did it the summer between first and second year of med school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the reserve component, it's going to be a little bit different. Again, you're in a student status until you graduate residency. You're not live in the Army Reserve component. So for the folks on MSSP, the first time you will probably see DCC will be sometime within the first 12 to 18 months post residency. So as soon as you become a board certified physician in whatever specialty of practice, you could expect that probably within the first 18 months after that, once APMC transitions you from the student status to a full-blown physician in the Army Reserve, that's when you could expect to see orders to DCC. And then within 18 months after that is when you could expect to see orders to the basic officer leader course.
Yeah.
BOLC is a really good time, by the way. Really had a good time. San Antonio was, going through BOLC, the river walk. It's a really good time. You get the weekends off. Normally you make a lot of good friends down there. The going in the field part is not as fun, but the weekends are great and you make a lot of good friends. And then you go to Austin, do the river walk, do lots of sorts. I did a lot of fun stuff for BOLC. I thought it was like a summer camp. It was awesome.
So any other questions out there?
I'll put my email out here too. If anyone is, I'll just put it on this thing. If anyone's, I'll just put my personal email just because it's so much easier to communicate that way. If anyone has any other questions for me that they think about later, or you're, interested in, uniform services, AAEM or whatever, just reach out to me.
And likewise, especially for individuals that might want to kind of dive in deeper in terms of maybe their own personal eligibility into the different programs that exist. And so, yeah, there's definitely individuals out there that are more than willing to answer any of your questions that you may have and really get you connected with individuals like Captain Sletton, who is essentially who's a little further down the path than most, and would be able to provide a kind of more of his personal experience and guidance. And so,
Yes, and if you do or would like more information, feel free to click on that link that's in the chat right now.
Yeah, but with that, I guess we'll probably stay on for a few more minutes just to see if there are any questions that that might come up. And
I got a message, quick kind of private message. They asked why I chose Army over other branches. The reason I chose Army over other branches primarily was because it's the largest branch. So that means that they have the most residency programs. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Lieutenant Schwantz.
oh no, you're good, sir.
And so I knew that if whatever specialty I wanted to get into, they would have like a lot of residency spots. So Army had the most residency spots. They're the biggest branch. So that's why I did Army. Looking back on it, I realized I'm still happy I went Army. The other branches do, they defer. So they may not have a lot of spots, but they do kind of defer some people to the civilian setting. So you can potentially train in a civilian setting and get this, do the same specialty. But that comes with a couple, I think, caveats. So you lose out on a couple of benefits and things like that. And then you still don't train in a military setting. So it also sets you back in terms of being prepared for your actual job. But in the end, I think the Army was a good choice just because they can accommodate pretty much everyone's particular interest in whatever specialty they want to go into, just because they're so big. They have so many, military training facilities and things like that. That's why I chose Army. I can tell you why I didn't choose Navy is because I'm terrified of sinking in a boat in the ocean.
That's good. And yeah, just like Dr. Sletton said, the Army is the largest medical force in all of the armed forces. But to kind of add on to that, the way that military medicine is starting to go, it's going to be more joint as the future goes. So regardless of the service that you choose, there's a chance that you're probably going to be working at a naval hospital at some point. There's probably going to be a chance you're going to be working at an Army hospital or an Air Force-based clinic somewhere, depending on your specialty. As we integrate more of the medical forces together, that joint compound will be there. So a lot of it comes down to culture of the different services, family history, and then, but the biggest differentiator, just like Doc Sletton said, is the ability of educational opportunities and specialties within the Army, as we are the largest of the three medical services.
Yep. I get a couple private message here. The other question was what the average Army EM looks like as far as deployment cycles. Most people deploy at least, so when you get out of your training, you're going to have a 4-year commitment, most likely. Most people have a 4-year commitment because they did most people have a 4-year commitment because they sign up for the 4-year scholarship. So that some people do the 3-year scholarship, they may only have a 3-year commitment, but most people deploy at least once during that 4-year commitment. And the deployment tends to be somewhere between 4.5 and 9 months. So it's not, 9 months is a long time. I was deployed 7 months. And that'll pretty much, it'll only be one deployment over 4 years. Now, if you do shorter deployments, like say you get your deployment cut short, it might make you eligible for another deployment because they have something called dwell time, where for every month you're deployed, you're non-deployable for that amount of time. And so I'm in like a 7-month dwell period where I theoretically should not be deployed. So in the end, unless they're really aggressive about deploying you and you kind of draw the short straw, you probably, I wouldn't expect you to get more than 2 deployments, and most people only end up with 1. So I don't know if that answers that question. And reserves, I think, deploy less, but I can't be sure about that. EM is one of the more preferred. Like the Army really loves EM docs and surgeons. We're the most, and anesthesiologists, but we're the most valuable from a combat, standpoint. Like we're very versatile. We can treat any injury. We can treat a fracture. We can treat a heart attack. We can treat a gunshot wound to the chest. Like anything that comes through the doors, we're capable of taking care of it. So we're kind of like the Swiss Army knife of physicians. So that makes us valuable to the military. So they they like to deploy us. If you're a, pediatric oncologist, you're not going to get deployed probably. And probably, it's, if you're a trauma surgeon, you're definitely going to get deployed. And I think I kind of was really excited to, and I really embraced being deployed. So if it's something I think is kind of exciting to get out there and take care of our soldiers. But the Army likes their EM docs because we can serve so many different roles and take care of so many different things out there. To that question, and these guys can probably tell you too, but the Army is extremely friendly to married couples. So they will bend over backwards, especially if you're both in the military, they will bend over backwards to get you to the same place. So it is, they prioritize married couples over everybody else, actually. So they will almost certainly be able to make it work, especially if you're in the same branch. I know that it doesn't work out for everyone. I know there's, some stories where people get split up, but generally the military is extremely considerate of that kind of thing.
Right. There's actually a program dedicated to it, the Army Married Couples Program. And just like Doc Sletton said, they definitely prioritize. And especially if both of you are really subspecialized, I mean, your duty locations are already numbered, right? If you're really subspecialized. But like Doc Sletton said, the Army really does a good job at trying to keep the married spouses, dual service married spouses together.
Nice.
All right, I think we're pretty much wrapping up here, and I'm gonna have to jump off. But folks, I appreciate your time. I know Doc Sletton appreciates it, and so does Lieutenant Schwantz. If you have any questions, we put our contact information out there. You can also fill out that little link in the chat forum, and we'd be happy to answer whatever follow-on questions you may have following this brief, or any in-depth related questions about incentives or service commitments or whatnot. But other than that, if there's no last-minute questions for me, I'm going to pop off. Lieutenant Schwantz, I leave this, and Doc Sletton, I leave this to you guys.
All right.
I'll follow your Schwantz.
And so I guess I'd suggest we'll probably just stay on for a few more minutes just to see if there's any kind of last minute questions that might roll in. But really, other than that, I think if anything comes of this webinar is definitely the showing how many individuals that are out there that are more than willing to really answer any questions. Especially I've seen just a lot of within the comments section, just different individuals willing to answer those questions that you may have. So there's definitely answers for any of the questions that you may have or that may come up in the future as you kind of really discuss the different opportunities with those closest to you, whether they be family members or close friends. And so the more resources you have available to make an informed decision, the better, for sure.
Dr. Sletton, would you mind talking about how you feel the Army or the military in general has made you a better emergency physician?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say one of the things that the Army does, and it's not just like what boilerplate statements, is they they really develop leadership more than you're going to get anywhere else. One of the big reasons they develop, well, the military, like, it's really a big focus. So they want officers to be able to be leaders when they come out of training. And then when they're in their officer position, they expect you to be a leader. So you get a lot of, you get a lot of mentorship and focus on leadership. And then the other thing is there's a lot of turnover in the military. So that means there's always like new positions that are opening up that you probably are a little unqualified for. And so you get to step into these leadership positions really in junior places in your career. So all this to say that I think it has made me a much better, more capable leader that put me in all sorts of uncomfortable positions where I had to grow in order, grow and do things I wasn't even sure I was able to do, or, be a leader in positions I wasn't even sure I could be a leader in. And that goes from like an academic standpoint where like I was pushed to like give presentations and perform, do research and write papers and do things that I wasn't, I wouldn't have otherwise had these opportunities for. And then it goes to just general leadership, being in charge of junior soldiers, things like that. So I think the biggest thing, in answer to your question, not to kind of go off too far, is I think it really kind of helped develop me as a leader. And as far as an ER doc, I think there's a little bit more, like, just if you want to just do nuts and bolts, I think that the Army medicine is really good on teaching you austere and wilderness medicine, and a lot of like improvisation and being like self-reliant and being, not just like academic, but being like very, practically valuable, like practically capable of doing things. So I think from an austere medicine, like the emphasis on wilderness medicine, austere medicine, operational medicine, gave me a different perspective and maybe made me a little bit better from just a medicine standpoint, just because that kind of bleeds into the way your general medical abilities. And then the leadership thing, I think those are two things that just come to mind right off the top when you ask that question. I'm sure I could think of other things if I had more time.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Well, I think with that, probably, I don't know, Dr. Sutton, I'd probably give it another minute or so, and
Sure.
but
I thought we had some really good questions from this group. I hope seemed like some people genuinely interested. Some really great questions.
I do have another question. I know, so I'm in the Navy, and I am on the medical student council, so I'm here representing them. But I know in my emergency medicine residency through the Navy, and I know it's similar through the other branches, you have the opportunity to do operational electives throughout your residency.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an opportunity that's extended to people who are joining during residency? Like attending the mountain medicine course and
I see what you're saying. Like as during residency, can you do those courses? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Correct. If you're not a part of the military residency system.
So if you're not a military resident, can you do it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if you're not in military GME, so if you're not at Madigan or one of the military programs, so if you're joining through FAP or one of these other.
Oh, that's a good question. I honestly don't know if you can do it if you're. It's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question. I could look into that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd definitely also have to do some more personal research into that, but yeah, I've never heard that question before.
Yeah, I know it's something I'm looking forward to. So it may be a good thing to distribute to people who are considering the joining through FAP or those other post medical school programs.